Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie. This is Dan Prickett. I'm honored to be the chair of the Ways and Means Committee this year and maybe next if I do a good job. We're going to dispense, since we're meeting on Zoom, we're going to dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance and get back to that as soon as we're back, hopefully in person. I am going to take roll so we know who's here. For those of you who are have a screen and it's up and visible, when Petra calls your name, raise your hand so we can see you. That'll be easier. And for Scott, you can just answer, yes, I'm here. So Petra, would you go ahead for the roll?
Mr. Prickett.
Here.
Mayor Labriola.
Here.
Ms. Conley.
Here.
Mr. Moffett.
Here.
Dr. Parker.
Here.
Ms. Tillerson. And Dorota will be coming, correct?
Great.
That's correct.
Thank you, Petra. All right, the first agenda item is the approval of the minutes from the meeting that took place actually by the last Ways and Means Committee on December 1st. I'd asked Mary Ann and Stephanie Tillerson to pay particular attention to it since they were there and I was there. The other people will have to take our word for it that it's accurate. It wasn't complicated. There was one piece of new business related to a request really by the town of Hallover Creek, which is the resort, for an easement relative to the bike path. And then there was an executive session relative to our town attorney, Joe Wilson. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Dan, I've read them and I move to approve the minutes from December 1st, Ways and Means.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. John has written. Any discussion about the minutes? All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the minutes are approved. We have no old business, so I'll move to new business and ask Stephanie Tillerson to discuss item A before we call a vote. Stephanie?
Yes, and I will turn it over to our town attorney, Mr. Joe Wilson, who has put this request in, and I concur with him. And so,
Yeah.
go ahead, Joe.
So pursuant to my request, I've suggested that the town look into retaining a separate prosecutor to handle town matters in the municipal court. And this is the way that we've been doing it on Folly Beach. It's motivated by several different things, but one of them is, I feel like it's better to have someone with a solid criminal background, which I frankly don't have. I've enjoyed doing municipal court and I've learned a lot about it, but especially in light of the fact that we have some upcoming potential trials. I wanted to get someone in place who has some criminal trial experience. I've suggested Adam Young, who is indeed the Folly Beach prosecuting attorney. He has 7 years of experience doing that. And before that, he was with the Ninth Circuit Solicitor's Office for 5 years. And I've worked with him. I'll continue to work with him as we've discussed, and I've discussed with Stephanie. I'm still going to be working with staff whenever they have questions about application of our ordinances and even some procedural issues. For the most part, they might get to the issues that are better answered by Adam. But for the most part, I'm going to still be there dealing with staff and addressing their questions. And frankly, I'm planning on, if I can, I just had at least the first day of municipal court on February 16th. I can participate to at least, introduce myself to our new judge formally in court and make sure everything gets handled smoothly.
Great. Thank you, Joe, for that explanation. At this point, let me call for a motion and then we can discuss this. Is there a motion to approve this contract basically for services with Adam Young of Young and Young Attorneys?
This is Scott, and I'll make such a motion.
Thank you, Scott. Is there a second?
Second,
Mary Ann, thank you very much. All right, I'll open this for discussion. Questions that you may have.
This is Scott again, and I just have two questions. One, does Counselor Young and yourself have any financial conflicts of interest or any financial arrangements that are not spelled out in this contract?
No, we are completely separate and apart.
Okay.
No.
Okay. And then I also understand that your contract is basically a fixed flat rate. And so this is just an add-on for the prosecutorial work that he would be doing that you're not, that you feel that he's more qualified for.
Yes.
Okay. That's my only two questions.
Joe, this
Yes.
is
John.
John. I had a question. I talked with Stephanie last night. If you don't have the basis for that $150, if you could somehow memorialize your thinking in terms of how it's embedded in this contract. You know, if somebody would ever ask us the question, where did the $150 come from? If you do have a basis, then just include it in the memo.
It is not coming out of my contract, if that's what
No,
you're.
not out of this contract. This contract, the contract that's before us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, that is kind of on the low end. That's, you know, I'm on a flat fee, but it's kind of the fee that I look at as a standard municipal fee. I think it's what he charges Folly Beach. Other than that,
Joe, I'm not questioning, I'm just asking it to be memorialized, just to have a note in the file from you to Stephanie saying what you just said, that this may be what he's being charging Folly Beach. And I mean, so someday somebody will ask, where did that number come from? And none of us.
I got it. Yeah, okay, sure enough.
Thank you, John. Mr. Mayor. Any other questions, comments?
no, Dan.
Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve? Oh, we've already done that. We have the motion. So all in favor of approving or this contract with Adam Young of Young and Young, say yes or raise your hand, or both.
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you. All opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Next item is the approval for a contract with Coastal Science and Engineering, and Jim Jordan is going to discuss this. Jim?
Correct.
All right, thank y'all. So I'll just be brief and happy to answer any questions. So obviously we all know how important the beach is to our island, and so since 2005 we've contracted with Coastal Science and Engineering. They're a beach engineering firm out of Columbia. Dr. Tim Khanna, who's certainly one of the most, if not the most well-respected, coastal scientists in our state, is the principal for that group. And so again, we've been utilizing them since 2005. And for the past, probably 12 years, we've basically been on rolling 3-year contracts with them. And so the one we're currently in will end later this year. And so we're looking for 3 additional years with them to start in August of 2021. And just, briefly, obviously you've all seen the proposal, but, what we get for this, under this contract is, the biggest thing is they come out once a year in the fall. They survey 60 profile lines along the beach. And so they're basically looking at sand volume changes and shoreline changes every year. And so those surveys, they start inland of the dunes and they actually extend well past low tide out in the ocean. So they do this work both with land-based survey equipment as well as in a boat. And then so obviously with all of that data, they crunch the numbers and provide an annual report. making comparisons to prior years, and then tell us generally how our beach is doing. Is it accreting? Is it eroding? Are there any problem areas we need to worry about? And then obviously, if they identify any problem areas, then they work with us to develop a plan to address them. So they've, again, they've handled our work on the beach since '05, got us through 2 pretty big beach projects that all went really well. So I'm very pleased with the company and the work that they provide. Happy to answer any questions.
I have one question. Do they do the beach all the way from end to end? So all
Correct.
from the inlet to the
Yep.
whatever the other side is
And they
called?
actually, yeah, so the survey lines basically start at Captain Sam's Inlet, and they're spaced out about evenly. They wrap all the way around the east end to include the area along the Stono River.
Okay, thank you.
Does this, Jim, does this add to a database that we've had of this same kind of information for some number of years?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, actually Coastal Science and Engineering did work for the town prior to '05. So they've actually got data from the late 90s out here as well, but certainly continuous data collected, pretty much in the same manner since '05. So it's obviously, nice to have that historical data, all in one location to, look at changes over time.
Right.
Jim, this is Scott. When they provide us with this updated data, do they overlay that upon historical trends that you see, so that you can actually see visually see a trend?
Yeah, they do. So every year,
Okay.
typically in March, we'll get a final report, and that final report will have basically graphs of each profile.
Okay.
Different. And it basically just shows kind of a cross section of the beach in that area. And so that'll be overlaid, with lines there's typically a line from 1999. And then, you've got lines leading up into present, in particular the last couple of years. So yeah, graphically, it's pretty easy to see what's going on. And they also typically come to a council meeting, typically probably in April or May after the report has been produced to give a presentation and answer any questions council or mayor might have.
Great.
Thank you.
Hey, Jim, kind of reflecting on the conversations that we had last week, is there a similar type of consulting group or effort on the marshes? In terms of how they may have changed or may be in the process of changing?
Yeah, it's obviously something that the town has identified as a priority to tackle the issue of the marsh and marsh change, and we're working to do that. A company like Coastal Science and Engineering certainly has the technical capabilities to put together a marsh type survey. So certainly it's something they could help us with. Though they mostly, historically have focused on beachfront issues.
No, I understand that.
Jim, isn't that what Lee and the Conservancy are doing right now with their marsh management plan, looking at where it's accreting and discreting?
They are, yeah. They're looking at it, not so much in volume or elevation changes, but more in vegetative composition. So, the ratio of vegetated to unvegetated marshlands gives you some indicator of the health of that marsh system over time, whether it's, thriving or not thriving. But it's
Okay.
It's kind of a new, I won't say it's a new field, but, there's still kind of some evolving, development of methodologies to monitor the marsh. It's something we don't exactly understand 100% how to do, whereas the beach is pretty straightforward.
Great. Thank you. If there's no other questions directly of Jim, is there a motion to approve the contract with Coastal Science and Engineering?
I so move.
So moved. Second.
I'll take Mary Ann's movement and Scott's second. Is there any other discussion regarding this contract?
The only thing I would say is you measure what you treasure. And I think that, we've identified the beach as one of our treasures. And so we've got to be very proactive and make sure that we understand exactly what the dynamics of the beach are.
Thank you, Scott. Good point. All right. With that, all those, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
I'm sorry, Jim, is the contract consistent with prior contracts in terms of the value?
Yeah, it's a little bit higher. So if you go back to the last 3 sets of 3-year contracts, which would have started in 2012 through 2014, and then taking us up to present, it was around 30,000 the first set, 29 the second set, 32 and a half for this prior contract. And so now we've got a moderate increase to 37.9. And I asked them why that was the case. And they mentioned a number of things. The biggest is that they've upgraded a lot of their survey equipment and gotten basically more sophisticated in how they measure. So they've got, they're measuring changes in much more detail than they did historically. So with that, they've got increased maintenance cost as well as the cost of the equipment. And then the other justification they gave was that they've shuffled around some of their staff. And so whereas some of the tasks under the contract might have gotten performed by folks who had a lower hourly rate, those are now performed by more senior scientists. And so there's a slightly higher personnel cost associated with that. So it is an increase, but I don't believe it's substantial in light of the service they provide.
Jim, then I would just ask that on your memo from yourself to the Ways and Means Committee, that you maybe alter that memo and memorialize what you just said.
Yes,
I think it's just a good practice in terms of when we're renewing, especially when we're renewing a contract with some existing entity, that we reflect on what they previously had charged us, et cetera. So just to have it here in black and white.
It won't, but he'll do, Mayor, he can make that change because it comes before town council. So in town council's memo, it will reflect that additional information.
That's fine.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, John. If there's no other questions, I'll call for a motion. Motion to.
So move.
So moved. I'm sorry, who did that?
Scott.
Scott, thank you. I couldn't see you move, Scott. Marianne, second.
Yes, I did.
All those in favor signify by raising their hand and saying yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. Next is item C on your new business, which is an approval for an amendment to a contract with Island Beach Services. And Brian, I think you're going to handle this for us, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a little bit of background. Beach Patrol is an instrumental part in making sure that the beach is kept clean and safe year-round. Members of the Beach Patrol are present daily to enforce town ordinances, educate guests on the island's history and wildlife, and to keep a watchful eye on residents and guests partaking in beach and water activities. Our current contractor for Beach Patrol is Island Beach Services, LLC, and we've had a contract with them since October of 2009, with the last renewal being awarded in February 2017. Island Beach Service has fulfilled their 3-year contract extension, their 3-year contract, along with the first 1-year contract extension that expires in February of 2021. Island Beach Services is seeking to be awarded the second 1-year extension to the contract to expire on February 6, 2022. Further, Island Beach Services wishes to have the extension awarded with amendments made that have been previously discussed with town staff. These amendments include deferring the responsibility to purchase and outfit the staff with the required automatic external defibrillators. With this responsibility being put on the contractor, they would also ask to increase the contract sum to reflect that new responsibility. The contract sum would increase by $11,842.85, which breaks down to $2,368.57 per unit for 5 units to outfit the staff. The town staff requests that the Ways and Means Committee recommend to Town Council the approval of the contract extension for Island Beach Services as amended. If approved, the current contract sum with the contractor would increase by $11,842.85.
So as I understand it, Brian, only change is this addition of the equipment which they're going to purchase instead of having us purchase it.
That's
Purchase
correct.
and maintain.
That's correct. The AEDs will be the responsibility of the contractor to outfit and maintain at this point.
And those defibrillators will be used only on Kiowa and not on Seabrook also.
Yes, ma'am. These will be for the Kiowa Beach Patrol.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions of Brian?
So I have one on the 3 that are replacements. What happens to the existing 3? Are they just no good anymore?
So
Yeah, they're over 5 years old.
That's correct. And actually the 2 that they have currently are from 2005, and these
Okay.
the regulations go through updates
Right.
every 5 years or so.
Yep, I'm good.
Too old. John, we're going to check on your expiration date as well. Okay.
Yeah, carry one with me. Hey, Brian, just a question. Is there any, maybe not formal linkage, but informal linkage with Rod's group and Sauce's group and the EMS group off island? You know, do they monitor will they monitor our radios?
Well, Rob,
Sorry, would you like to?
Is that Bob?
Yeah.
Dr. Parker, can you mute your phone? We can hear the conversation.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
I was just curious more than anything.
Councilwoman, did you have something to say about that, or shall I?
No, go ahead, Brian.
Okay, so yes, Mr. Mayor, well, and actually we'll kind of get a little bit into it with another agenda item. The Beach Patrol scans the EMS and fire stations, so we're always able to kind of be working together with the different entities, and should there be an occurrence, an event that happens on Kiowa, all of these law enforcement and medical and fire entities switch over to the Kiowa operations channel, so that way there can be intercommunication with everybody.
Okay.
and they are also part of the public safety organization that we have for the town. And they have they maintain a good relationship with fire, sheriff's, rescue, an ongoing active relationship.
Well, I knew that it was a positive relationship. I was just more curious about the technical side, whether or not, you know, they are monitoring. Well, you'll get to that probably with the radios, if they'll monitor our radio.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you. If there's no other questions, I would ask for a motion to recommend to Town Council the approval of this extension with Island Beach Services.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Scott. All those in favor of this recommendation, say aye.
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 Opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Item D, Brian will also handle, and that's a recommendation relative to a contract with Untitled Trails, or the company doing business as Titled Trails. Brian?
Yes, sir. So background on the Tidal Trails franchise agreement. Outdoor sports and activities are a big attraction for residents and guests on Kiowa. There's an abundance of opportunity to enjoy and explore the river, ocean, and creeks with surfboards, kayaks, and floats. Stemming from their parent company, Water Sports Unlimited, Tidal Trails is a company with whom the town has had a franchise agreement to allow the rental of such equipment to guests and residents. Tidal Trails has requested to enter into their second one-year extension of their contract that currently terminates on February 6th, 2021. There are no requests to amend any parts of this agreement. So town staff requests that the Ways and Means Committee recommend to Town Council the approval of the extension of the Tidal Trails franchise agreement. There will be no financial change. The town will continue to receive the payment for the annual business license renewal for the agreed upon annual franchise fee of $100.
Okay, questions of Brian?
I have a
Go ahead, Marianne.
I have a question, Ryan. What do they actually do for us?
So they're a company that they rent out surfboards and kayaks and paddle boards
On the beach?
on the beach or in the at the river access right there.
Okay,
They're a means to explore the outdoors for residents and guests.
thank you.
Brian, it seems obvious, but the only fee I guess we get other than the business license income is the $100.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Is that reasonable? I just don't know. Seems like we ought to enjoy some kind of benefit, but beyond.
Well, I think that perhaps we could, after this contract, you know, should they be awarded this extension and this goes up for a whole contract renewal, it might be worth investigating how much revenue they're doing on the island and kind of investigating if that needs to be a heightened franchise fee at all. You know, again, we are getting their business license fee, of course, but I'm sure that this was kind of like more or less a copy and paste, because Tidal Trails has been around, I mean, since I was going out there as a kid. They've been around for a very long time. So sure.
And we've only did $100, and we can have Dorota look into it. I don't know why it's always been $100 since I've been here for the last 5 years. So I don't know if there was some reason why it was at $100, but we can look into it. This kind of predates a lot of us that's currently here now. Maybe Jim, Jordan, or Stephanie or Petra may know, but we'll look into it for a council meeting. Just not to change at this contract, but maybe understand was there a reason why it was set at $100.
I think that would be a good idea, Stephanie, and not to interfere with this contract extension, but I wouldn't want to entertain a new contract without a hard understanding of what that is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not trying to be difficult with them, but.
I agree with you, Dan.
Okay.
Dan,
Yes,
kind of as an overarching question, I should know this, but do we have access when we have a contract with somebody that's paying us a fee? Is there any way, do we have access to their income statements, to their revenues, losses? Do we know?
So I think that's
Dorota answer that, but yes, we do have the ability to audit through our business license.
Through audit, okay.
And so Dorota, we have audited a few of our franchise vendors.
Yes, and to that, but like Stephanie said, we may request that, but when they apply for a license, they need to report the revenues. So even though we do not require to attach an income statement, but we do know how much they've made.
So you do know how much
We know how much revenue they have, yes.
I can check that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Dorota, when they tell us how much revenue that they're doing, is that in just ranges, or is that something that's very granular?
It's actually, it's not projected, it's what they've made last year, so.
Yeah,
so,
but
So it is.
I guess my question is it by range or do they give us a specific number?
Specific number.
Okay.
It's a.
Then I
exact
assume we just take some percentage of that?
for the business licenses,
Yes.
yes, there is formulas, yes. Mhm.
Okay, any other questions before we vote? Okay, all those in favor of recommending this to town council?
Aye.
Yes, and aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Scott. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Bruce, we have a purchase of an air purification system for town hall, I think. Would you take that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Air purification system, and just briefly, eliminates all airborne contaminants, which include bacteria, mold, and also is 99.4% effective on viruses, including COVID-19. Therefore, obviously, purifying the air, less contaminants landing on solid surfaces within offices helps improve, not helps, but does improve the air quality within the entire building. The contract is for, we have 21 air handlers within our building. Each of these devices is placed within those air handlers. Contract includes all installation costs, taxes, all fees involved. Also, they've Berkeley Heating and Air is also offering with their contract a 1-year parts and labor and warranty contract. The cost of this is actually, and DeRoden may be able to talk to this a little more intelligently than I can, but it's also refundable through the COVID initiative. So as we do obviously pay for it on the front end, we do get reimbursed on the back end. It was,
Dollar for dollar?
Well,
Yeah.
it would be, we've gotten reimbursed already, but we got reimbursed on the original cost. It went up, I think, additional $300 from when we got the first quote. So it's through the CARES Act. And so we already submitted that for the phase 2. So we've already got reimbursed for all of it, except for about $300. If they have a phase 3, we will submit the rest.
Good.
That's pretty good. So we're covered under the Relief Act for everything except for the $300 we may or may not be out. Good question.
Yes,
Correct.
just a
So-
time issue. When this was going through the budget amendment, it was one price, but the contract was only good for, I think 30 or 45 days. We were outside that time. When we went back to them, their price went up slightly. So we had already submitted the original cost to get reimbursed back.
Right.
But I think that's pretty good. Even if we don't get, even if they don't have a third phase, we're only out, $300.
Okay. Any other questions of Bruce? Sounds like we all ought to have one for our homes.
Amen. Hey,
John?
Bruce, is there anything that you have to do preparatory to this? I mean, we had some, I know there's some ceiling work going on and things like that. Do you have to complete that before these things get installed, or is this thing ready to, independent of that? Do you have to clean out the ducts? Anything like that?
There's the ductwork doesn't have to be cleaned out, and there is no preparatory work involved to actually install these systems. They're a very compact system. They fit within inside the ductwork, easily hooked up within the controls of the equipment themselves. Basically, they operate off a 24-volt system, which is available in each one of these units. And it's kind of a plug and play system, if you will. Very simple installation.
Thank you.
Bruce, Scott, is this an ultraviolet based system?
No, sir, this is ionization. We
Okay.
did look at the ultraviolet light system.
Mhm.
A little more expensive, but the cost was not really the issue. It was more the fact that the bulbs had to be changed out periodically.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
there
yeah,
was,
yeah.
there is no real, what I would call good information out there on how long the bulbs would actually last. Are we going to replace them every quarter, once a year? I just couldn't figure that out. So we kind of got away from the ultraviolet type systems.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions, Bruce? Okay, we need a motion to approve a recommendation for the purchase of the air purification system. Is there a motion? John, thank you.
For the air purification system.
Okay, John raised his hand, so I'll take his motion and then ask Marianne to be the second.
Second.
Okay, Marianne. Great. All those in favor, signify by saying aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Scott, thank you. All right, motion passes unanimously. The next item is item F on your new business, which is the recommendation for the approval of the purchase of public safety radios. Back to Brian.
One more. Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So communication is the key to transparency and coordination between team members and other entities on the island. A very efficient way of communicating daily operations and emergency scenarios is through radio communications. The radios are used daily by town staff and Beach Patrol for communication and updates. Beach Patrol uses them to receive information from the town and other entities, and also to carry out their daily operations. Current radios that are...
Got it. All right.
Thank you.
John? Thanks, Scott.
The current radios that are in circulation between the town staff and Beach Patrol are between 12 and 15 years old. Not only are they past their peak operating capacity, they are no longer serviceable for repairs. So what we've seen, and especially this past summer, is when one of these radios breaks, they no longer have the parts to service the radios. So we are just canceling out those radios as they get damaged. So after initial discussion at the Ways and Means Committee meeting last October, the committee asked for further vetting and confirmation on the radio type, capability, and quantity. And those, all three of these have been confirmed. I've been in contact with the Motorola sales rep that we do business through, and also with the director of communications for the county. And he has confirmed that for our needs and operations to be able to communicate within town and Beach Patrol, and then out to the different law enforcement and medical and fire entities, that these radios on this quote are what we would need. So for the quantity, I've got Rob on here if you want to ask any other questions, more technical questions, but basically it breaks down as follows. Beach Patrol is requesting 10 radios to designate 5 for each one of the patrol units during the peak season. 2 radios, 1 for each one of the owners, which will be Rob Edgerton and Michael Sosnowski, that they will have with them 24/7. And then there will be 3 radios, 1 for each supervisor to have at all times, and one of those being designated to the medical doctor on staff. So the pricing breakdown for these radios is in the quote, and basically to sum it up, the unit price for the staff radios, which will be a different model than what Beach Patrol is requesting. The staff radios come out to $2,381.19 per unit. And then the Beach Patrol radios come out to $4,709.52 per unit. So after programming fees, estimated tax, the total is going to come out to $66,491.68. The town staff is requesting that the Ways and Means Committee recommend to town council the purchase of these radios for members of town staff and beach patrol. The beach patrol radios are able to be purchased through local accommodations tax, and town staff radios will be purchased through the general fund. And I would like to add too that this figure was added in the budget amendment at the end of last calendar year. So these funds have been in there. We just need to have formal approval of this cost.
Great. Questions, Mr. Mayor, of Brian?
Brian or Rob, whose responsibility is to maintain them if they're lost, to ensure that they're always functioning? Who is that? Is that yours, Brian, or is that Rob's? Or
contractually, it's the town's responsibility as it's written.
So if one is lost, we just buy a new one?
For basically for all intents and purposes.
And you'll have a procedure of some sorts to maintain them, to swap out batteries and make sure that they're kept up and functioning and working? That'll be something you'll do?
Well, yes, sir. So Rob and I work close with each other. We worked close this past summer, and when there's an issue with the radio, whether a broken antenna or a broken lapel mic or a new battery, he notifies me, and then I get in touch with the vendor to get those serviced.
I trust Brian. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Oh, no, is that in a document somewhere? Brian, what you just said, the contract that we have with Rob's group about these radios?
Maybe not as specifically as that, but in our contract with them, the town holds to, or the town maintains and funds the radios for the beach patrol.
And also, I think too, maybe I'm wrong, Brian or Rob, but also with these particular radios, Beach Patrol, they do not have the authority to buy them.
So that is, Rob, if you'd like to speak to that.
Sure. So, Mr. Mayor, to answer your questions, there is a clause in our contract. Like Brian was saying, the town provides and services the radios. Any damage to the radios due to abuse or misuse by the contractor will be paid by the contractor. Our guys understand how expensive these radios are, and to date, we haven't. I think the last one we completely destroyed was over a year ago. I'm sorry for the dog. So that there was one that was destroyed that was back in 2003 or 2004, and we haven't lost any due to misuse or abuse or neglect since then. Otherwise, Ms. Tillerson was correct. These radios don't operate line of sight, so they're on a special trunk system. So when we key up to talk on the radio, it goes to a county owned and maintained tower, and then it gets rebroadcast to all the other radios in the county, and so or whatever radios are on that same channel. So essentially, what the county says is that they only allow municipalities to have access to that radio system. And so as a private contractor, we aren't allowed to purchase our own radios and maintain them on the radio system. So the director of communications for the county has suggested sort of just in some informal conversation with me that there may be some agreement that could be worked out, but it hasn't been done up until this point. And he said it didn't sound like he was real excited about it, but I'm sure he would discuss it with any of you who would be interested in doing that. But as it stands now, we wouldn't as contractors be able to purchase radios and activate them on the county system.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
No problem.
Great. Mary Ann?
Question for Brian. Brian, what is the status of radios and CERT?
The CERT radios are still operational and functional because those are used on the island, and those are newer than the ones that Beach Patrol has. And again, as soon as these different entities switch over to the Kiowa channel, these radios, CERT will be able to communicate.
Great.
And can I just add
Thank
one
you.
thing? With regard to the radios, the difference between Y staff and Beach Patrol, when we were talking about it during the budget amendment time, we were told that it was recommended that Beach Patrol, their radios are more sturdier because they're at the beach, they're more in the element. Town staff were able to get different radios because they're indoors for the most part. So ours is not as expensive. And that was one of the reasons why the difference in the price between Beach Patrol and town radios is because they need more of a sturdier one that can sustain the salt, air, and outdoor environment.
Brian, this is Scott. I have a question about the numbers because
Yes, sir.
who are these three supervisors? Because if you go back and read Beach Patrol's contractual arrangements, it says that one person from each beach patrol would be designated supervisor. So I'm not clear why they need 3 supervisor radios if each person on beach patrol has a radio.
So,
Unless I'm misreading the contract wrong.
Well, I can maybe let Rob clear that up a little bit, but basically during peak season, in the summertime, there are 5 units in operation on the beach, and those
Right,
units
I
are
get that
independent.
number.
Right, and so then the supervisors might not necessarily be on the beach during those times, and the supervisors, according to the structure of beach services, they feel it beneficial to have their supervisors with a radio 24/7 to be able to respond in emergency situations. And Rob, if that needs a little bit more clarification, please.
Sure. So specifically, we have 2 designated supervisors every season. Obviously, we can't have the one person out there every day of the year. So that supervisor shift is generally in the middle of the day, and so there's the middle shift is like 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And so when they are coming out to the beach, there's stuff that's been going on for hours. When they leave the beach, there's still stuff that's going on. It makes for a more seamless transition into the supervisor duties for the day to have an understanding of what's going on, where the units have been patrolling, any issues that they're having. Also, we frequently have our folks turning around. We get a dispatch notification by phone and by radio, and so all of our phones are set up to receive notifications if there's a call on the beach. And so a lot of times our staff will be off duty. They'll be either coming into work or leaving the island, and they'll have to, instead of being able to go right to where there's an issue, they'll have to go and pick up a radio, figure out what's going on, and then go to the actual site. And so if we had those 2 supervisor radios that could be take-home radios, essentially, that's been the model that we've employed for several years now until we had some radios get deadlined this year. And as far as the third quote-unquote supervisor radio, that's for our med control physician. And I think by convention, the med control physicians for organizations typically have a radio in case there's some issue or question for care that comes up. But pursuing our DHEC certification, that was something that we feel strongly about him having one. So.
Well, I'm certainly all in favor of the doctor having one, and you have clarified the reason for the 2 other supervisor radios in my mind, in that it provides for continuity of care for when they are not actively in their shift at the moment. So thank you.
Rob or Brian, how do you communicate with Tony from the association? If there's issues that you're dealing with, something up with them on the beach, you just call them on the phone, or what's the
so the community association does have one of the county 800 radios that we're talking about, and so does the resort. And so all of the radio traffic that Beach Patrol has can be monitored by Kika and by the resort every day. All of their people don't have access to that, but whoever's for the resort designated at the sanctuary doing sort of their dispatch duties, and then whoever the supervisor is at the main gate for Kika, they all have the ability to talk and communicate on those channels with us.
So from a community's perspective, if something untoward would happen on the beach and you begin to communicate to each other and the town, whatever, equally there's communication that's going to the folks at the resort. I'm sorry, and the folks at the association. So
That's
all.
correct. That's correct.
Great. Okay, Rob, thank you for that help. Brian, thank you for your conversation. I think we need a motion for this. I forgot where we were. Is there a motion for the approval, a recommendation for the approval of purchase of the public safety radios?
I'll move.
Thank you, Scott. Second. Thank you, Mary Ann. Second. All those in favor of this purchase, recommendation for purchase, say aye.
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 Opposed? Seeing none, the motion is approved for recommendation to council. Next item on our agenda is the chairman's report. Let me mention just two things, a little bit repetitive, but I wanted it in the minutes of this particular meeting. At our offsite, as all of you know, we discussed having the Ways and Means Committee, and we will staff this and bring it back to you. Also work on two items this year in addition to our normal duties. One is an emergency funding plan for the town in case of what we'll call a major disaster of some form, which we will do. And secondly, a bit of research and study on the issue of the town's ability to make investment decisions within the scope of what we're allowed under state law to make sure we're optimizing the return on our investments in a difficult, low interest period environment, which we are. So I just want to make everybody aware that we're going to work on that during the course of this year. And we're already got our first meeting coming up this week on Friday, so we're getting started. Next item is the treasurer's report. So I'll turn to Dorota for this first 6 months of this current year.
Yes, thank you. So as I mentioned at the retreat, we'll review the quarterly results, financial results every quarter at the Ways and Means meeting. And if it's canceled, it's going to be at the town council meeting. Through the year, you're going to see those numbers as on a modified cash basis, with the exception for the final audit report, where it will be modified accrual basis. And so let me just share my screen. Just want to make sure that you have access to it. So the first 6 months, when we look at the first 6 months, our consolidated, I'm sorry, my computer wasn't working, so I'm using Achilles, and I don't know.
Rhoda, as you go through this, just remember Scott can't see it. So when you highlight things, be specific about what you mean.
Okay. So so as of December 31st, our consolidated fund balance was a little over 17 million. And of this amount, about 55% on 9.5 million was unrestricted, and 4.5 was capital fund balance. Just because this is the first meeting for some of you, I'm just gonna go very briefly through all the items, the balance sheet items. So our assets, that's pretty much cash and investments. Cash is all in Wells Fargo, and investments are with the South Carolina local investment pool. We, like I mentioned, we report through the year on a modified cash basis. So the accounts receivable is just an item that is pretty much the offset for the unavailable revenue, which is 84,000 is for the the judgment for Gunnels. He's paying us $300 a month, but we want to make sure that it's recorded somewhere and it's in accounts receivable. So 84,000 of this is for the judgment, and there is another 54,000 that is a lien that was put on the property that was Turnberry Lane, the house that was contaminated. So that's, like I mentioned, we don't really accrue anything through the years, and that's the items in accounts receivable. Accounts payable is pretty much what we've paid the week before a preparation of these financial statements. This time is a big number only because it was a week where we paid our GO bond. So that's why it's rather high, the accounts payable. Normally it's low. Unearned revenue, it's pretty much the fees, the garbage fees that we collected now, but they are for next year. So, and the big one, 240,000 in special funds, is the money that we were pretty much banking for PGA. The PGA a couple of years ago approached us to help with the funding with the transportation during PGA, and the state accommodation tax has designated 120,000 per year through the 3 years. And so we designated the money for 2 years, and we just paid them another, or we added another 120 and just paid them the whole amount. And the rest is the fund balances. As I mentioned, they pretty much, when we compare the total fund balance to what it was at year end at 6/30, you will see about a decrease of about 1.6 million. But again, this is pretty much related to the payoff of the bond. Any question on the balance sheet? No. Mayor, you muted. I don't know if you.
Explain again about the lien on that property.
So we had a lien. The town had some costs related to demolition of the home on Thornberry Lane. I can't remember what was the number. So it was about $54,000. We recorded this as a lien. So once the house is sold, we will collect that money. Or, but just so we don't forget about this, we recorded this in accounts receivable, even though we don't know when we're going to receive it. But we just want to make sure that there is a record of that contingency or that lien.
John, you remember that was the house that was abandoned, remember?
Yeah, and it was we had some costs related to demolition of that.
So we effectively have a lien on the
property.
The future, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So now when we look at the actual P&L, so our revenues look pretty good, and as I mentioned before, we have had pretty conservative projections for the revenues. Well, while we were approving the budget, we really didn't know what to expect due to pandemic, and the revenues, we assume that they're going to be pretty much the first quarter is going to be 50% of what it was in 2019. Second quarter would be 75% what it was in 2019. And it ended up being that they pretty much about the same what we've earned in a prior year. So our revenues for this 6 months actually exceeded the projected or even amended revenues, and about 10%. Right. The expenditures are also looking pretty reasonable and within what's in the budget. I don't know do you want me to go in a little detail of what the revenues are, or just, I don't know.
No, I mean, I think most of us have studied this, maybe harder. I don't know whether you've got it with you, Scott, or not, but I don't see anything that requires lots of explanation unless somebody has a question.
Okay, so yeah, in general, they're pretty much within the budget, and the only one item that is have a big positive variance is the landscaping, but it's just timing issue because we were projecting to have the landscaping finished by the end of last year, and there's a little delay for that. But that $500 will be just spent within probably this quarter. Everything else, I think, will end up within within the budget, and there is really no items to report to you as exceeding the budget numbers.
Right. So the big variance this year, the big difference overall, is the issue that we elected to pay down the debt on the municipal center, given the fact that it was costing us more to borrow the money than we could earn, and we had enough cash set aside to do it. So other than that, we're operating much more normally than we thought we would, given the uncertainties of COVID and the impact we thought there would be on the operation of the island. So, that's turned out well. Questions?
I have a question. With having paid off that bond, is there any more debt associated with the building, or is it all just current expense?
No, just operations. Operations. No, there is no more debt.
We own it now.
We own it. Other questions of Dorota?
Dorota,
Are there plans to have a mortgage burning ceremony?
That would not be good for the air, Scott. Don, did you have a question?
Yeah, on your line item, tourism and recreation, what is that?
So that's a big item. So this is all pretty much expenditures that are paid from special funds. So this is, for example, all James projects. Everything that we use the not state, but local or county accommodation, hospitality accommodation taxes, they are under this line item because they are tourism related expenditures.
Thank you. Okay, so it's coming in up in this revenue, but this is the line. This is the capture where you where you're expensing all of this.
That's correct. So that would be like, for example, conservancy, wildlife projects. If we would have any arts council expenditures, I mean, we have very little, but normally that's where it would go to. Beach patrol, everything tourism related. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions of Dorota?
No, thank you.
Okay. Before I get to committee members' comments, any comments from our town manager? Steph?
No comments. I said unmute myself. I don't have any additional comments.
Okay. I'll go to committee members, starting with our mayor. John, questions, comments? Great. Thank you. John Moffett. John Moffett?
Nothing from me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mary Ann?
No, Dan.
Scott, any questions or comments?
Not a thing. It was very informative.
Thank you for stepping out and participating via phone. Counselor, any comments, sir?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there, seeing no other business, is there a motion that we adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Second?
Second.
Scott, thank you. Second. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All of
Opposed?
those in favor for the first beer, say aye.
I bet you won't be having a beer. I'll bet you'll be having something else. Anyway, thank you.